It's Dashia D.
And it's JStan.
Welcome back to In Retrospect Podcast, where we look beyond the surface to find understanding.
Bring you laughs, knowledge, and culture.
So sit back, relax, and join the convo.
Yeah. Today we are joined by the Officer Mallett, my brother in arms, from the greatest fraternity ever created. Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. One of the coldest brothers around. One of the strongest brothers around. Don't make him mad. He will knock you down. And he is also an entrepreneur. He has several things going on, but most importantly, we brought him in today because of him being a first responder, specifically a cop. It's okay. We're safe. We feel fine. We're here with Fred. Everybody, let's give Fred a round of applause.
I appreciate that. That's actually a great intro, honestly.
The reason why we brought Fred on is because since the pandemic, we've seen like an influx of police-related deaths as it pertains to the Black community. And that in conjunction with the mass shootings that have been happening and them having to respond to that in the midst of a pandemic. And then on top of all of that, you are Black. So it's like, it's a lot of different roles happening at once. And so it felt like it would be interesting to get your perspective, because I think on one side, you have people who are like F12. And then on the other side, you're like, oh, cops are not bad cops. So just to deal with the voices. So you have these opposing views, and then you have people who just don't care, right? But one rumor that comes up a lot, especially with the whole police brutality thing, is why don't they just shoot the person in the leg or the arm? Why is it that they hunt them down, pretty much? So the rumor is that you guys are trained with military staff or with military tactics. And so that's why you guys shoot to kill versus the harm. Is that true?
So you're trained to shoot to eliminate the threat, whether that be, you're trained to shoot center mass. So in the midst of a situation going on, you could be aiming center mass and you could miss every shot that you take. You could hit them arm, leg, or chest, wherever. It depends on the person, the situation, honestly. There have been people that have been military experienced that have got into gun exchanges with people and they miss shots, but overseas, different situation. But you're trained to eliminate the threat. So, that's really the way to put it. I can't say that shooting them in the leg would be better, because there's been studies that show there are a lot of arteries and stuff that's in the leg. So shooting somebody in the leg, you can bleed out a lot faster than other things. So it varies, but you also don't want to
protect and serve, Fred. Protect and serve.
I mean, that is true, but like I said, you gotta also think about it. Like if you can shoot somebody in the arm, for precision, that means you have a lot of things that are working for you that you can sit there and focus on. And if somebody's actively aggressing and doing something, the odds of you hitting them in an arm or something to be like, oh, somebody's doing something to me, I need to stop, that's probably not going to happen. So, I mean, that's where the center mass comes in. It's a bigger target and it gives you, the greater possibility of stopping whatever is going on.
So does it matter if the person is unarmed and running away? Are they still considered a threat?
So if you are unarmed and running away, you are not a threat. If you are armed and you are running towards possibly more victims, say if you have an active shooter and they're running away from you into a mall, if they've been shooting at some people, odds are they're probably going to go in the mall and keep, actively aggressing against other people. So in that type of situation, you'd be justified in shooting them if they're running away. But if somebody's unarmed running away from you, that's just not going to go well.
Then so Fred, why are most mass shooters, would you say, in your honest opinion, why are most mass shooters typically taken in unarmed then?
Those guys, they're stupid but smart. They know that if I come out with my hands up and they're empty, there's lethal force isn't justified. So a lot of times they they already have in their mind how they want to go out, whether they want to go out in a blaze of glory, which is getting into a gunfight with law enforcement, saying that, hey, I came in, I did this, and I was able to, take on the law too. And however that ends is however it ends. Or if they say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to give them the opportunity to possibly kill me. I'm going to, take the coward way out, and I'm going to, shoot myself in the head. Because I mean, only a coward would go kill other people and then, kill themselves. Or they say, hey, you know what, I'm just not going to let that play out, and I'm just going to come out, unarmed, and just, go to jail. That way I get to, hear the things that are said about me, kind of see like that whole, I guess, manifestation of whatever they plan to do, kind of keep exploding.
I guess it's hard for people to receive that. I definitely understand what you're saying, but I think it's hard for people to receive that because on the flip side of that, you see the George Floyds, right? And you see I think his name was Michael Sterling, not Michael Sterling, I forgot his last name, but the one in New York where he was selling like the blue cigarettes.
Yeah.
And those people who are not armed and yet they're taken down as if they were. Comparing the two, it's kind of like, well, the only difference was their color. So was their weapon their blackness? You know what I mean? That's why I think sometimes it's hard to receive that. What were you about to say, Justin?
No.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Just with some of those situations, like I said, I wasn't there, and I've only gotten kind of like some of the same information that other people have with like some of the situations. But with the guy that was selling the cigarettes, to my knowledge, and I'm not, taking a stance on either way, I'm just saying like, just kind of just like, I guess, third party in this. But like when they were encountering him, at some point or another, one of the officers that was on scene said that, there was a gun, or they saw a gun. And when he was shot, after, they were going to render aid and make sure that seemed secure, they did not locate a gun. So there were two officers on scene. If one officer is saying gun, 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 if I'm telling Justin, hey, he's got a gun, Justin's going to take my word for, hey, he's got a gun. So if he starts shooting, it's like, oh, shoot, like he's got a gun there. And then afterwards, if I'm not mistaken, you can hear on the video, they're kind of talking there like, hey, where's the gun at? So, it's information, getting the right information out, that solves a lot of stuff, and that can prevent a lot of stuff. But just for that situation, that was.
Yeah, I also will say this too, though. When you get into these situations, that these are high risk situations. And a lot of the issues that are, in my opinion, that are causing most of these cops, I'm not going to say all, because the bad ones are always highlighted, is that there's usually a record of bad behavior over a period of time that is ignored. And usually if you have enough incidents or instances where you have a track record of bad behavior, why are you not being psychiatrically evaluated for leave, saying that you need help? Like, why not?
Honestly, like that comes down to the department and the chain of command. Because like you said, I mean, a lot of stuff can be documented. It depends on how it's documented and how they follow up with it. I mean, some things they might say, like their internal affairs department might say like, hey, hey, they got a verbal reprimand for this, or this situation was unfounded. The complainant, that person, the complainant, has like a history of kind of like things, and like nothing was ever found. Like it can all vary, but it comes down to the department. I mean, all law enforcement agencies are hurting for officers. They want more people. Is that an excuse to keep some people? Absolutely not. Like, you want the best people that you can to be able to do the best, so that way you aren't having these situations come up where, once something happens, they're going to start digging and they're going to start finding stuff. And now you see, hey, this person had X, Y, and Z. Why were they still out there doing this when, y'all didn't pay attention to it, the first however many times, but you still decided to, do this. So.
Right. And I mean, we live in the United States of America, of course, where most of the employees' number one issue is they suffer from burnout. No matter what profession you're in, you're suffering from some form of burnout. And it's even worse because when you have first responders, specifically cops, or the people that are supposed to be policing, enforcing the law, of course, they're working more than likely 12-hour shifts, the folks that are out in the field, or better. Sometimes they work over, depending on if an incident takes place, then their 12-hour shift could potentially turn into a 16-hour shift. So all of a sudden, now what? It's a very interesting,
Yeah.
like a very interesting way of things for stuff to be going on like that. Like I'm not making any excuses for anybody, but at the same time, it's just that people's minds can't function. You're working 16 hours straight. You're not gonna make the best decisions that you should working 16 hours straight.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for our department, our cutoff is 16 hours. We work 10-hour shifts. Our cutoff is
See,
16. But I mean, even still with that, it's like if I work a 16-hour day, I think I have to have at least 8 hours off in between that I can come back. But still, I mean, a 16-hour day is long. Like if you come back and you have to work another 10 hours after that, like that's a lot.
you're
Like
not,
especially
yeah, you're
like
not gonna make the best decisions.
so I mean, it's it comes down to people knowing themselves too, and also like the department having different things in place so that way they can try to at least say, hey, we got a system in place so that way we're not trying to burn you out. Like it does happen where you do work long hours, but it's like, hey, if you know that you're tired, you know that you're on edge. It's like you got to know when to tap out yourself as well. Like know that, hey, like you know what, I'm just not feeling it today. I might need to go home. I might need to just let somebody else handle this call. Like there's nothing wrong with that. Like comes down to talking to the people on your squad too. Like you just let them know, like, hey, I have a bad history with this person. I don't feel like talking with them today because last time they cursed me out pretty good or whatever it may be. Like, just let them know, like, hey, like, what, somebody else handle this. I mean, it could even be a sergeant or
Right.
something. Hey, I'll go
I
call.
so even going even further with that point, I feel like cops are similar to teachers in that you guys do a lot, but you're underpaid. And one of those things that you guys are, and I could be wrong, it could be based on departments, but
Oh
one
no,
thing,
baby.
huh?
They underpaid. They
No, 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 no,
underpaid.
no, no. I'm not talking about salary. I'm talking about what I'm about to say. So I
Okay,
think
cool.
you guys are required to go into situations that, like dealing with people who have severe mental illnesses, right? And you're
Ooh.
expected to de-escalate them. Now, there are some departments who have social workers or who have mental health practitioners, and I think that's needed because what you just said, you're working 16 hours, you're not really sleeping, y'all have to kind of eat when you can during your shift as far as when I was interning there. And so it's like you have all these things going on and then you're going into a very intense situation and you're expected to de-escalate it, which I do think that you guys should be able to, but I think it would help to have that extra assistance, but a lot of times y'all don't.
Right.
And then you pair that with someone who's frustrated and you have weapons.
But you also got to be careful too, though, because if you really think about it, for instance, if they go into a hostile situation where folks are arguing per se, and they're trying to de-escalate, it can easily turn into that argument that two folks were having being directed towards the cop or the person on the scene. And then from there, stuff could escalate, even though they're trying to de-escalate, and it could turn into a whole, you know what I'm saying? Now the cop is in survival mode and these people are on the attack. It could always be that. But what we're seeing most of the time in the media is that the cop is on the attack and the people are usually the ones that are being hunted down.
So
why is that though?
Like the first part, just before we get into the latter part, with the social worker stuff, at least for our department, we have mobile crisis, which is a great thing, but mobile crisis sometimes 2 hours out. So if you got somebody that's on medicine, off medicine, doesn't want to get back on medicine, they could easily go from being cooperative to now they're aggressing towards because I don't want to go back to the hospital. Some people would rather go to jail than go to the hospital. And people would actually fight you over that. Like, I mean, like it happens. Like a lot of things aren't necessarily criminally related. So
some people just want a bed and food, to be honest.
Yeah. And like, I mean, there's been times where people like, I just want to go to jail. Like, just go ahead and take me. I stole a chocolate bar just so I can go to jail. Like, there's nothing out here for me. So I'm ready to go. And I mean, they go. Some people, you have to, it kind of comes back to communication. You have to learn how to like talk to them. So you could tell somebody, hey, I'm not going to take you to the hospital, but I'm going to take you to this clinic that's going to, work with you more personally, besides just sending you here, putting you on some medicine and then, kicking you back out. Because everybody all the time doesn't want to always go to a hospital, but they may want to go to a mental health clinic instead. Somebody that's willing to actually work with them and figure out, hey, what's causing this, put them on a different type of prescription or medication, whatever it may be, versus, just sending them off to the hospital. Because I mean, that's like a temporary fix for maybe a few hours and they're right back out.
Agreed.
The same thing with suicidal people. Like it's the same procedure. You can do an emergency protective custody order on them where you pretty much like force them to go to the hospital, and after they're checked out a couple hours later, I mean, they can be right back out. So if they're really intent on doing whatever act they're going to do, they're going to do it after we've, done everything we can. For like the second portion with it being like, seem like people are being hunted down.
Yeah.
Social media plays a lot into a lot of stuff. I mean, the job of social media is to get views, to get likes, to stimulate conversation. And what's going to stimulate conversation and stuff right now is somebody getting killed. That's the sad truth behind it. Oftentimes you'll see like a video. I mean, I've seen them too, like maybe like a 20-second video of, somebody getting shot, somebody running away or something, but you don't see the 5 to 7 minutes or whatever may have led up to that. So, I mean, and people purposely do that. I mean, there are probably videos of me sometimes out there in breaking up crowds, whatever, people yelling at me, and they have like that 10 seconds of people yelling and whatever, saying whatever, but they don't have the other 2 minutes of me explaining exactly why I'm here, what's going on. Like people don't want to hear that at time. They just want to get their fame in. But
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I have a little pushback on that. I definitely understand where you're coming from as far as, yes, social media will give you 3 seconds of a 30-minute encounter and now you're the bad guy. I definitely agree with that. But on the flip side of that, there have been studies done to show that Black people are 3 times more likely to die from police encounters than white people. So it's like, we can't really, numbers don't lie, right? And so I do think that it is a deeper problem because you have people who are exhausted and underpaid, paired with, if they have some racial biases.
Yes, old ideas.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster.
Because usually when you're tired though, like that's when your rude, like your true character comes out. Like you might be grumpy, but who you truly are when you are dog tired is really gonna come out. Like you might be irritated, you might be able to mask like, hey, what's going on? But after you get tired enough, you'll get real blunt. You're gonna really show who you are.
Yeah, I mean the numbers are the numbers. I believe numbers. Numbers are legit. Like, I mean, you can't dispute numbers.
Yeah.
Kind of really like, I mean, that's really how I feel about that. Like numbers are numbers. Like it is true. I do think the numbers could be better in some ways with just communication. Because I mean, there's been times where not like, a lethal force situation would have even been like anything close, but it's like I'm telling somebody, hey, like, you got your license, registration, insurance, whatever, and they're like, man, why are you asking for all that? It's like, like I'm just like, chill, like just talking to you like how I am now. And it's like, they're escalating. I'm like, like chill out, man. Like I'm not trying to dig deep. I'm not doing any of that. Like, I just have to give you this warning so that we can both go on our way. But it's like you're kind of making this worse. So I mean, that's for me. Yeah. But kind of going back to like what you say, if you got somebody that's frustrated, tired, irritated, and it could switch from, hey, license, registration, why you asking me for that? Hey man, I told you what to do. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's an adult. An adult doesn't want to be told what to do. Like no matter who you are. So
I'll be honest though, I get very anxious and on edge when I'm pulled over by a police officer. Literally, like my heart will race. And I feel like it's gotten progressively worse the more I see these stories on the news. Like one time I went to Tennessee to visit a friend in a very white part of Tennessee. And I was walking up the steps and I went to the wrong house. As I'm coming down the steps, it was a cop on the sidewalk. When I tell you my heart went to my feet, and it wasn't like I was doing anything wrong. It's just, again, what's being presented. And so it's like, I don't know if I'm going to, and I don't want to be dramatic, but literally, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this interaction. So I don't know if that's why people become agitated when they're pulled over, because they're like, ugh, I don't want to deal with you right now. I just want this to end, like right here, right now. I don't know.
I mean,
go ahead, Justin.
I said, everybody is different, right? You have some folks that'll go into a situation level-headed. You got some folks that'll get pulled over knowing they did something wrong, or their personality is anytime something comes into their life, they go on the offensive. So off rip, they're going to react how they know how to react. So like, for instance, that example Fred said just moments ago, somebody comes up, says, license or registration, please. Will you pull me over for? I didn't do nothing wrong. Sir, license and registration, please. Man, get out my face. All right. So now this situation, it could possibly go left at any moment now. So, with that, it's just like you just don't know. That's basically all I got.
I mean, like say, like just kind of piggybacking off of that same situation. If you got an officer, like say, if I'm just coming up there, just I plan on writing you this ticket and we going, but you're giving me that, like, hey man, why are you doing this? Why are you harassing me? It's like, what's going on? Like, I mean, that's starting to trigger, like, what's going on? Like, why do you not want to give me your license registration? Like, I pulled you over for a tail light being out or whatever. Like, you didn't use turn signal. You might just roll through a stop sign. It's like, that's something minor. Like, what's going on? Like, is it like, do you have a warrant? Because people with warrants are people that are registered on a certain list that they don't want people to know that they're registered under. They are hesitant to give you their license. And it's like, hey man, like if you don't want somebody that much in your information, like I get it. Like, I mean, that's your privacy. But it's like, when you just be in a situation where people are like hesitant to, give up information like that, like I say, especially if it's just, hey, you got your license, registration, insurance. I mean, you, at least for our department, you're required to explain the reason why you stopped and state who you are, and ask for license, registration, insurance. So like, if you don't get nothing else, like that's the minimum. Just give them what they asked for and nothing else. Like, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Like, if they come back, with other stuff like, hey, did you smoke recently or whatever? Nope. Like, do you mind if I search? No, I do not give consent to search. So it's like, if you don't have that probable cause or anything, you haven't done anything, just say no.
Right. And I will agree with that. I just want everybody to understand that, yes, there are bad cops out there. There are, that is a real thing that's going on. All cops are not bad, of course, but there are like precautions you can take if you do feel unsafe and you feel like, like Daisha mentioned moments ago, that your anxiety is getting better. I mean, not better, worse over time. There are people that put extra cameras within their own personal vehicles. So if you want to refute or argue, a claim that is made against you, you have something that is recording. Not saying it's going to make you feel all the way, make your anxiety feel better, but it'll make you feel a little bit more comfortable with when you're trying to make a case. It's just like, listen, this is not what occurred, this, that, and the third. But at the same time, you got to always remember to be level-headed. A lot of people have a hard time being level-headed and asking questions like, can you explain to me what I did? And that is not what I did. I do not agree with why I got what you're saying that I did, versus a bunch of yelling, because then nothing gets resolved because nobody's listening when you yell.
Oh, go ahead.
Just real quick, I would say, like, I agree with that. Like, if you want to record, that is your right to record, as long as it's not interfering with, whatever investigation going on. Like, say, like, you don't have like the light on your camera, like, right in the officer's face, so like you can't see what's going on around. Like, you can record. Like, there's nothing wrong with recording. Like I say, I always tell people, tell your side of the story. The biggest thing is, like, the way to actually have something, done or changed isn't right there on the side of the street. Like, you don't want to get into that arguing match on the side of the street. File a complaint, have like the organization look into it, or the organization, the department look into it. If nothing is done, keep filing it. If nothing still is done, go a step above that. Go to, SLED or a different place, like start writing the mayor, different things, like, get it inside, like, the court system or somewhere that's documented outside of just on the side of the street, because on the side of the street is just,
he say, she say.
Rules. Yeah. So, I mean, I say, like, if it's something like, it sucks because, like I say, people want, that justification right then and there. But, that satisfaction of like, hey, like, I wasn't wrong. Like, I was right. I mean, I've been in the court a couple of times where people were up there testifying for traffic stuff. And it's like, hey, like, the judge sided with them. It's like, hey, if you didn't believe this, then, hey, they stated this and say that, I'm just going to dismiss the ticket. No harm, no foul. It's like, hey, yeah, you got pulled over that day. You were written a ticket, but you aren't having to pay the fine. You went to court. You told your piece. The judge agreed with who they agreed with, you leave it at that. Versus if, you got that ticket, now you want to start fighting, you get arrested for, resisting arrest or whatever, something that would have been just like a paper violation. Now you go into jail, you have to spend a night in jail, then you have to, pay whatever bond amount it may be, and then you still got to show up for court. So now you still pissed off from everything that
legal fees
happened. You show up to court and you like, ready to start hooting and hollering, and it's like the judge is like, hey, I'm just going to dismiss this. You already done did time served. And it's like, you wouldn't even have to do that. And you just like, all right, cool. What's the court date? What's the time? All right, boom. If you can't make it, just call them up. Say, hey, I can't make this court this time or date. Can I work out something, either a payment method or can I, it's ways to work it out. Like go through the courts, not on the side of the road.
I wanted to ask, how do you feel like the community receives you as an officer who happens to be Black?
It can be hit or miss, to be honest. I mean,
Okay.
sometimes people are happy, and sometimes people like you're the first person that they pick out to take out their frustration against. Like, I mean, that just comes with a part of it. Like, I can be talking with somebody one day, they happy, we cool, we chopping it up. The next day, they MFing me and everything, and like, you know, you the worst person, like you sell out, this, and that. And it's like, we was cool literally just yesterday, but now you're upset with me because I'm standing here, you know, just kind of observing, you know, nobody's getting hurt, nobody's, you know, getting beat up on or anything. It's like, my how you just gonna stand right there? And it's like, what's going on? Like, I'm literally here as a backup officer. Officer pulled a traffic stop. I showed up and it's like two people just kind of out doing by. I'm like, hey yo, I'm like, come over here. What's going on? Talk to me. Man, he pulled a U-turn behind me. He stopped me from running a stop sign. And it's like, okay, well, did you run it? Yeah, but he can't do no U-turn. And it's like, did you run
You broke the
sign?
law.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, man, but he did a U-turn. He was watching me. So it's like, you know he was watching you. You ran the stop sign, and then when he conducted a traffic stop on you, you got upset. It's like, you know, like,
So do you think that they assume like we see each other, you supposed to have my back sort of deal?
yeah, I mean, when it benefits them
Okay.
or somebody that they know is like,
Yep.
hey man, you know, like they want you to just side with them automatically, and then, you know, like we can handle the rest later. But that's not how that would work, because I mean that would end up with me being fired and them just living their life to the best of their ability. Because I mean,
Okay.
like, I couldn't be like, hey, you know what? Nah, they can't go to jail, because then, you know, that's going to come back on me. And then, you know, when they go and do something else, it'd be like, hey man, you got me. And it's like, that's just not how that works. Like, if you do something, like skin color or not, it's like right is right, wrong is wrong. You know, if you do something wrong, you have to, you know, there are consequences behind your actions. But, you know, you can't just play the race card every time just because, you know, you're a certain color. I mean, and it comes from, you know, opposite races too. I've had them like, hey man, you know, you get it. And it's like, I get what? Like, I know what?
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, you know, like they're like, yeah, you know, or they'll be like, hey, that brother there gets it, he gets it. And I'm like, get what? Like, I'm literally just once again standing here, and you're like, hey man, no, all right. You know, the daps and, you know, one handshake, hey man, I appreciate you, man. Like, it's like, come on now, like just no,
I
don't do that.
I actually would think that it would be helpful to have cops reflect the community. So like not necessarily that they need to live where they work, but just yeah, like having them reflect the community so it doesn't feel like there's such a huge disconnect. Because I've only worked with kids. But when I used to teach, or when we were at Metanoia, there was one point where they started having police officers, I think from North Charleston, coming to like make all the food for the summer camp in the summer, just to try to bridge that gap so that they didn't feel like it's just these people who come and take away my family members. They're actually safe people who I can go to who are here to protect and serve, because some of them have a very narrow view of what it means to be a police officer. So
I think, you know, being a part of the community definitely would help, even if, you know, you don't always live there. I mean, there have been different officers of different races that, you know, get put in predominantly Black neighborhoods, and they fit in just fine because they know that, hey, like this isn't my home, but this is their home. You know, how they interact and stuff is different from how I may interact, but just because it's different doesn't mean that it's wrong. So I mean, like when somebody can get that, like that makes it easier versus like, man, like this place is just different. They doing all this, and that, like that, just like it doesn't make sense to me. How can people live that way? It's like it's going to be different, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Um,
cultural competence. That's
yeah,
what that is.
and I mean, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, I know, like being in like the division that I'm in, like I'm in the communities a lot more, and we do a lot of things like you said, like, you know, preparing the meals and stuff, like interacting with kids, going to different events, neighborhood, like, you know, gatherings and stuff. So we do a lot of that, and we get the opportunity to talk with people, and like they're forthcoming with a lot of stuff, and just like, hey, you know, man, it's good to see you here. It's a lot going on. I really appreciate you. Like they're, you know, coming from that honest background of like, hey, man, like things aren't what they used to be. They're getting better in some places. They aren't in others, but you know, having somebody like you can help, you know, bridge that gap even more. which is good. Versus, like I say, like you show up in some community, they're like, okay, can I get over on them, or are they just gonna be like everybody else, and I'm gonna just have to treat them like everybody else? And it's like, nah, man, like it's in the situation of where like you did something wrong, we gotta address it. But if you're not doing anything wrong, I mean, even if it could be like you on public housing, you're not supposed to be on public housing. I'm not trying to lock you up for trespassing, but it's like, hey, if they put us over here and they're saying like, hey, we don't need a bunch of people hanging out because we've had a couple of shootings, whatever it may be. Like, if people not staying there because everybody lives there, but nobody lives there, it's like, hey, look, man, I get it, y'all hanging out, but you can't just be sitting here like doing nothing. So, I mean, it's like, I get it. Like, it's just having a conversation with people. It's not trying to be a hard ass and be like, yo, like, y'all ain't about to be out here on these streets, man. Y'all making it, rough on everybody. Like, it's like, nah, like they've been here longer than me. They're going to be here longer than me. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, like this is where they sleep, so this is their home. People aren't trying to always stir up stuff in their home. So it's like, I get it, but everybody doesn't get that. So it's just kind of going back to culture.
Justin, didn't you say something earlier about the training, like getting, I don't know if you said psychological testing or what? You said something about that earlier.
Yeah, getting psychiatrically evaluated. Getting psychiatrically evaluated because it's very important due to the simple fact that you're going to be dealing with people. And if your mental is not good, then you going to deal with people isn't going to be the greatest thing for everyone involved. Cool. So if you're dealing with all of these variables that are already going on within yourself that you're trying to fix or deal with, that's just not going to be good. But what's happening is that it seems as if when you hear about, these bad cops that are getting broadcasted around the world for what they did, there's a list of things that are shown that they've had incidents a mile long. They've been evaluated, and it's some of them have been evaluated, I will say, not all of them. Some of them have been evaluated, and it shows that they need help. But like Fred stated earlier, they don't always go get the help or given time to get all the help that they need. They're right back out there protect and serve because they don't have everybody or as many folks suited and booted as they needed. So unfortunately, some departments tend to look the other way when they should be dropping the hammer.
When you are in grad school to become a social worker or to become a psychologist, therapist, any of those, your professors will tell you, hey, get a therapist. Because A, you cannot help people if you can't help yourself. That's just point blank period. And then B, you need to unpack and address any biases that you hold, some of which you may not even know that you hold about other people because you're going to be in the community. I feel like police officers need that same conversation and same standard that Justin is saying with the testing. I think that should be a requirement for you guys to have some form of counseling or something, because obviously there are a lot of people out there who want to become cops and not for the right reasons. And it may not be to serve the community. It may be to be on a power trip and, hey, I got a gun, pow, pow, like that. You know what I mean? Those
pow,
people,
pow.
listen,
that what we rolling with? Pow,
I just
pow.
said I was in undergrad. My minor was crime and law. So I had a lot of classes with aspiring police officers and detectives and whatnot. I went to CFC. CFC was 7% Black. You already know the other makeup of that campus. So
Pow.
I would be in classes with guys who were white, and they would say some pretty problematic things. And so back then I used to think, wow, these are going to be the people with badges and guns in the next 3 to 4 years. And that's scary. So all of that to say, I think that should be a requirement to go ahead and weed out the ones who don't need to be there. Because I do think it's needed, but we don't need those who are on a power trip and trigger happy. So, go ahead.
I don't think that would be a bad thing. Like I say, I mean, a lot of mental health is offered. If it's taken, okay, that's
right.
Yes, it has to be a requirement because they're not taking it.
Just for like getting hired, the psychiatrical test is I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't pass, but I do know one person who didn't. I'm curious as to why they didn't, to be honest. Because, I
I'm
mean,
glad he didn't.
well, I mean, it's
I'm
interesting
just
because
saying.
he was another black officer. I mean, he was hired by another department, but I was
Oh
just curious
Lord.
about it. I mean, he was former military, so I'm guessing maybe it might
It's
have had
going
something to do with it.
down.
But
Some PTSD, maybe.
I mean, that's what I guess. Like, I never really asked him anything in depth because I was like, how did that happen? But yeah, I mean,
Questions that would never be answered.
I will say a lot of the psychiatry therapy stuff is coming out a lot more. And I mean, like, just from law enforcement in general, if you tell an officer, hey, you need to go get help, that's going to come over bad. So, I mean, it takes a mature officer to be like, hey, you know what? You're right. I need to talk to somebody. I mean, you can't keep all the different things that you see in to yourself and not talk
Yeah,
to somebody about it. Like,
exactly.
good, bad, or ugly. Just have somebody to talk to that can, third party that's neutral, that can be like, you know what, hey, we might need to dig a little bit deeper into this. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Self-care is important. That's a part of self-care. I can't imagine the amount of tension y'all hold in your bodies. Y'all have to be on high alert
All
often.
the time. Depending on what area you in, oh, it's real.
Yeah. So I just listen. There's a lot happening, I feel like, mentally for y'all and physically, and the help is there, but I feel like it needs to be a requirement, like JStan said. One thing I didn't want to forget to ask you was, with the influx of the police brutality conversation and the stories that we see, and then we have the Black Lives Matter movement, do you feel like BLM has been helpful or harmful to your role as a police officer?
Honestly, I lean more towards harmful, but it's kind of still neutral, to be honest. Like, I don't really think like it is. I wouldn't say it's been like a big benefit of like, hey, this is, this group has definitely like, helped, empower me in some kind of way. And I say like maybe more of harmful just because back when the George Floyd situation happened, there was a lot of rioting and stuff. And like I say, me being black, it's going to be like, hey, you should feel ashamed. Well, how are you not over here with us instead of, doing what you're doing? You're supporting this act. And it's like, that's not true. I'm not supporting what happened. Like, I think that was wrong. I do not agree with that at all. But it's like, there are businesses that have been vandalized, people that have been hurt, and different things. It's like, I'm here to make sure that they're safe. That is why I'm here, not because are out here, protesting and voicing your opinions. Like, you have the right to do that. I have no problem with that. Whatever you want to protest, do whatever, cool. It's just a matter of how you do it, because if you go about it the wrong way, then it becomes a problem. And then that's when law enforcement has to come in, step in, and try to keep the peace.
Yeah.
But overall, I'd say, I mean, it's more neutral. I mean, people are just people. Like, they see different.
Don't worry about it, Fred. I'll answer it for you. It's been extremely harmful. It has been extremely harmful to Black cops everywhere in America. And let me tell you why it has been extremely harmful. This is the thing. You have Black Lives Matters. You have certain folks that you wouldn't see in your personal community every day telling you about the steps you need to take, which is insane to me because everybody's community is different. The way I look at it is this. Yes, you can say Black Lives Matter, scream this, that, and the third, tell people to do this, but people have donated all the funds to Black Lives Matter. I believe Black Lives Matter initially was good. It was being proactive, and then it turned into a whole commercialization of like everything everywhere, and people were donating, but nobody was seeing it, any of those funds going into the communities that needed it. Or when stuff was happening, Black Lives Matter was collecting, but they wasn't putting out. And it's like, it's interesting to me because it's just like, if you're going to do all of this, then you have to get into the community. That's why I feel as if though it was doing more harm than good, because ultimately, this is just me personally. I feel like everyone has it should be everyone's obligation to try to get out into their own personal community and try to make that difference. And it doesn't even take a lot, to be completely honest with you. You can do something as simple as, creating some type of after school program, or not program, but just mentoring kids. Let's put it this way: the simplest of the simple. You can mentor kids to get them to look at different things, to explore different things, just so they don't go down the wrong path. Ultimately, yes, you can't stop the environment that they're in, because yes, circumstances is extremely, is what molds a person. But there's different things you can do within your own personal community to create change and all the stuff that we see going on. And that's why I personally just believe Black Lives Matter did more harm than good. It was doing good initially, but then it just fell off.
So we're blaming the entire movement for the actions of a few?
For the few, no.
That's what you just said. You said
no. When it became commercialized, when it became an entity where all it was doing was collecting money and it wasn't putting nothing out into the community, even past them. Right now, you don't hear about them donating into a bunch of these communities where a lot of stuff was done, is what I'm getting at. So it's like, if you're collecting all this money, you're telling people to donate. It's like, why would I donate to this where I can just put it back into my community somewhere to help benefit my community? That's all I was saying, as far as like doing more harm than good. And my thing is this. Oh, no, you good. My thing is this also, like, if you have issues, you need to go to your local town hall meeting. You don't need to be listening to Black Lives Matter on Twitter and Facebook. You need to carry your behind down to the town hall meeting where they're approving these roads, stealing people's land, all this stuff going on, but you blaming the cops because Black Lives Matter told you to.
I think that some people don't feel empowered enough to go to their town hall meetings and speak up, to be honest with you, because people have spoken up about gun reform for over a decade since Sandy Hook, and we just had 18, 19 babies die. So I'm just saying, I think that there are some people who go down and do that, but then when you're constantly fighting and screaming and crying and marching and you don't feel like anything is moving forward, you either get discouraged or you just feel like, well, damn, y'all don't give a damn. Y'all really don't care.
I'm just saying, because people have been conditioned. People have been conditioned to think a specific type of way. It's unfortunate because, like you said, everyone doesn't feel empowered, but the only way you can become empowered is that you have to want to become empowered. Like, somebody else could potentially empower you, but the kind of empowerment that people are getting nowadays, like Fred mentioned it earlier, people are seeing these 3-second snippets or possibly a 30-second snippet of something online, and that empowers them for maybe a week, roughly. Because then after that, it's just like people are starting to become numb to it.
Yeah. I know we've discussed a lot of hard things tonight. One thing I wanted to ask, though, was what are the pros of your job? I'm sure you didn't go into it thinking like, man, it's about to be a train wreck here.
So, I mean, it's really kind of on a personal thing, to be honest. Like, at first, when I wanted to join, like I said, like, coming out of college, it's like, I need a job. I needed something with benefits, something that gave me a retirement, something that wasn't really, looked at as just a job. There was like, some, I can't think of the word, but like
respectability, I guess.
Respectability of like, like, hey, oh, you're in law enforcement. Like, that's not an easy job. Like, not everybody wants to get into law enforcement. It's like, hey, like, hats off to you for doing that. I couldn't do it, but like, hey, you're doing it. Oh man, you're still doing it. You're doing good. Like, how is it going for you? That was all cool. I mean, I didn't really know much. I mean, I grew up in the country, like, being around like guns and stuff like that was, that was cool to me. So, I mean, having a bulletproof vest and having a gun, I was like, oh man, that's kind of cool. Like, granted, I mean, the vest isn't really that cool as I thought it would be, honestly.
Pow.
Like, it's probably hot.
It is very hot. Like, and it's
and heavy too. I heard y'all's gear and equipment can get extremely heavy depending on.
So normal duty belt and stuff is like extra 30, 40 pounds maybe. I mean, it's extra weight. That some stuff is handy, other stuff is just kind of there, and it's like, why is it here? I mean, like, it's my kids, they respect it. It's like, I want to grow up, I want to be in police, and I'm like, yeah, just keep that as a thought. If that's what you really want to do, then that's fine. I'm all for it, but just keep your options definitely open, because you can do a lot of stuff. But I mean, granted, I'm kind of got my hand in some of everything. So I mean, educationally wise, like, they good. They don't have to worry about going to school. I'm taking care of that for them. Career wise, it's like, hey man, if you want to go be a business owner, go be a business owner. Do your own thing. But like I said, like, just law enforcement itself, when I first got into it, I wanted to be a federal agent. So that's kind of what got me on the local level, and just wanted to build up the resume, get the education, get everything going, and then, just kind of climb from there. But I mean, once you get in at a certain point, you're like, it's kind of like a rat race. Like you keep going, and it's never really like you don't ever really get to that payoff of like, hey man, I finally made it. Unless you like, want to become a lieutenant, you want to become a police chief or something, then it's like just kind of comes back to that whole status thing. Like, hey, I was the police chief. I mean, to me, that don't really matter. Like, that's just a status thing. Like, I'd rather have a different.
Yeah. I think with any field, the higher you move up, the less involved you are. Like the less on the groundwork you're doing. So no shade.
Delegate. All right, show me the money.
We enjoyed having you. I hope someone learned something from this. Join us every Friday at noon. I have been Dashia D.
It's been JStan. And always remember to like, comment, and subscribe.